expected to be demonstrations, getting out is going to be a big problem. So avoid it altogether. Anyway, it's a great day that the Lord has made, and we're going to rejoice and be glad in it because our God is an awesome God, right? We start off with a warning that was given by the Inspector General of Police, Douglas Kanja, who says that police will lawfully and firmly prevent any breach of peace by groups of people acting in contrary to provisions of the law in today's protest to mark the June 2024 killings. Issuing a preparedness address in Nairobi, Kanja, flanked by top leaders within the security forces, urged protesters to refrain from provocative acts directed towards police officers in the execution of their duties. The top police commanders have held a series of meetings since last week to finalize strategies for managing today's protest, detailing how police intend to maintain law and order. Police officers from the General Service Unit, Rapid Deployment Unit, and the Regular Police Unit will be deployed across the city.
The Constitution, under Article 37, guarantees every person the right, peaceably and unarmed, to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket, and to present petitions to public authorities. Also, the Public Order Act, Cap 56, Section 5, Paragraph 1, 2, and 3 requires that such assembled persons should cooperate and coordinate with the police. For avoidance of doubt, Article 37 of the Constitution and also the Penal Code, Cap 63, Section 78 and 82, clearly provides the conditions necessary for lawful assembly. Public is also urged to refrain from provocative acts directed to police officers in the execution of their duties. The National Police Service remains steadfast in its commitment to protecting lives and property across the country. We assure the public that we will continue pursuing and dismantling criminal networks to ensure the safety and security of all Kenyans, residents and visitors.
Well, even before the protests kick off across the country today, President William Ruto has reiterated his administration will stand by the police, saying the security of the nation is non-negotiable. The head of state has sent a huge warning to persons he says are undermining, demeaning, and intimidating police officers. The government says it will offer support to the police to help them fulfill their duties and responsibilities.
So to IG and your team, you have my support 100% to secure this nation and to operate for all of us, every citizen. Nobody is above the law. None of us is above the law. You cannot intimidate the police. You cannot use force against the police or insult or threaten the police. You are threatening our nation. I must say this as president, that without peace, without security, without stability, we don't have a nation. The people who put their lives on the line to make sure that our families are safe, that our properties and nation is safe and stable, are our security agencies. As they put their lives on the line, we as a nation will support them. This administration will stand by them so that they can discharge their responsibilities within the law and make sure that our nation is safe. For the people who want to undermine, demean, try to intimidate our security agencies, I am telling them, you are doing the wrong thing.
At the same time, the Ministry of Interior, CS Kipchumba Murkomen, has announced that the government is ready to meet the families of the victims of the 2024 anti-government protests just before, the anniversary is held today. Murkomen stated that the government wants to engage in conversations with families to understand how to support them. Furthermore, he has called out leaders who intend to participate in the protests for changing their stance on political unrest in the country.
Kenya is the country that has the most difficult political environment to operate as a police officer. Political and constitutional. On one hand, the police are extremely constricted on what they can do and not do when it comes to managing public and making sure there is law and order. On the other hand, you have a population and particularly political leadership that is very belligerent in terms of supporting the work of the National Police Service and the police officers. So in this very difficult environment, the police are caught between a rock and a hard place. And in the circumstances, the police officers have to make a decision whether they will side with their country or they will allow irresponsible political actors to spoil the country. Your Excellency, these police officers, having for the short period of time I've served in this ministry, and having visited them in the northern part of the country, the Kerio Valley region, where maintaining law and order, and different parts of this country, you realize that despite the difficult challenges, economic situation, facilities that they are the most patriotic lot in providing law and order in our country. And Mr. President, if you hear the people who are speaking now about we want to come to the streets, we want to do mandamano and so forth, Your Excellency, you wonder what is the exact reason. You look at the reasons that have been provided. There have been situations where, unfortunately, in the course of this providing law and order, one or two unfortunate incidents have happened, and the law has been able to take its course. But you will find that despite that process, you will find people who are looking for every reason to come to street and to cause mayhem and to stop people's businesses. And then the police officers are sitting every day simulating how they will be able to stop these people.
They say the test of the pudding is in the eating. So today will be the eating part of that pudding. The police will be tested in their professionalism. I just hope and I pray that by the end of the day today, we're not going to have people going into eternity as a result of being shot by officers or otherwise. We should have as many people, we should not lose any life today. We shouldn't lose a life today. That's my prayer. And former Prime Minister Raila Odinga has endorsed peaceful protests by Kenyans and terming them a constitutional right. Odinga, who spoke in the afternoon during a groundbreaking ceremony in Mombasa County, noted that Article 37 of the Constitution granted every Kenyan the right to assemble and picket without police interference. In his speech, the former Prime Minister urged the police and the protesters to agree on the designated points of demonstration and the duration of the protests.
Yani kila Mkenya ana haki ya bila kuwa na silaha yoyote kutoka na kukutana na vile vile kufanya maandamano na vile vile kugoma na vile vile kupeleka kumbukumbu kwa serikali. Hiyo ni haki ambayo iko ndani ya katiba yetu. Kwa hivyo kama watu wanataka kufanya maandamano, sheria inasema kwanza unampatia serikali notisi. Ati sisi tunataka kufanya maandamano siku fulani. Tutafanya maandamano kutoka hapa mpaka hapo. Mnakubaliana? Alafu polisi kazi yao ni kwenda kulinda nchi, kulinda wale ambao wanaandamana na kuhakikisha kwamba wasiharibu mali ya watu wengine. Tunaikubaliana ya kwamba itafanyika kutoka saa hii mpaka saa hii, kutoka hapa mpaka hapa. Hivyo ndio inafanyika katika nchi zote. Mliona juzi wakati vita ilitoka kule Iran, mmeona maandamano ilikuwa huko London, kule Paris, kule The Hague, kule Pakistan, kule India, hata Amerika wanafanya maandamano.
In a country where hii nchi ingelikuwa imeungua, kukaa kuna wajeshi hapa ambao kwamba wenye kuzorora katika mji wetu huu, tungelikuwa na sauti gani hii? But I want to state one thing and make it clear. This is a party, and we will not swear away from that believes in the spirit of the constitution of this country. Kwa hivyo tunawaambia wale ambao kwamba ni mapolisi, anayetaka kuandamana aandamane, lakini aweze kuhakikisha amelindwa. Na yule ambaye kwamba anayeandamana, ukumbuke ya kwa kuna haki ya mwenzako yule anayeandamana na wewe, na yule ambaye kwamba hana uwezo wa kuandamana, lakini ni lazima aweze kuheshimu maoni yako. A belief in coexistence that is regardless of who you are.
Now, the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops has delivered a scathing indictment of President William Ruto's government, accusing it of enabling extrajudicial killings, silencing dissent, and mismanaging public resources while ignoring the suffering of ordinary Kenyans. In a joint statement, the bishops of the Catholic Church, 30 dioceses across the country, expressed alarm over what they described as a disturbing collapse of justice, accountability, and human dignity under the current administration. They criticized the government's harsh crackdown on youth-led protests, particularly by Gen Z demonstrators who took to the streets last year over high taxes and lack of opportunities. Instead of listening, the bishop said state agencies are responding with brutality, abductions, and killings.
Young people, we appeal to you to avoid any violent encounters during your protests and instead demonstrate your maturity. We call on the security agents to ensure we do not have a repeat of the protected goons who brought violence in the recent protests. How can goons work together with the police? We demand justice for all those murdered and those shot.
The cold-blooded shooting of Boniface Kariuki by a police officer at point-blank range is most shocking. Security officers are sworn to protect, not to harm. When those charged with upholding law and order become the source of fear and injustice, it signals a moral crisis.
And especially young people must be allowed to express themselves without fear. Speaking truth to power is a service to the nation, not an act of rebellion. We must not threaten dissenters with death. We must change our political discourse from insulting, dismissive, arrogant statements to constructive and respectful exchanges regardless of our political position or persuasion. We must stop threatening one another or playing games with death threats.
We reaffirm the sanctity of every human life, the urgency of justice, and the value of peace. That next Sunday, in all our churches, we offer prayers for the young people who died and for all the others who have lost their lives. May God bless.
Well, it's a pretty interesting situation. I mean, the church is really speaking. I hope that, the state is going to listen. The indictment on the state by the church is something so serious, because I remember in the past, in the last regime and the previous regime, the church was basically was the second term of the last regime. The church took a lot of beating. The first term, I think things were quiet. During Kibaki's term, the church basically, I think everything was A-okay. But during this first term of President Ruto, the church has really spoken first in support of him, 100%. And then now, it looks like the guns have really turned against him. Now, all 6 suspects in the murder case of Albert Ojwang have pleaded not guilty before Kibra Law Court's Lady Justice Diana Rachel Kavedza. The suspects include Central Police Station OCS Samson Kiprotich Talam, Police Constable James Muhwana, Peter Kimani, John Gige Getao, Jean Amito Obwao, and Brian Monikinjue. The lawyers representing the accused persons have requested the court to grant their clients bail, arguing that they are not a flight risk. The request was vehemently rejected by the prosecution, which argues that the suspects are likely to tamper with evidence and interfere with the witnesses. On Monday, the plea hearing was postponed after officers Getao and Kimani lacked legal representation. As of Monday, June 23rd, more than 20 police officers had recorded statement over the brutal murder of Ojwang while in police custody.
It's an obligation over you that this court finds that whenever a compelling reason is established, the court should not just deny bail, but must deny bail. That where we have established a compelling reason, the court's hands are tied and it must deny bail.
The accused persons are facing a possible death penalty. And this is a critical consideration that this court should address. Secondly, in regard to the 4th accused person, the 4th accused person is a deserter from the National Police Service.
The 4th accused.
The 4th accused. We've attached a police signal that declared him a deserter, a signal from the GSU commandant. This is, of course, a person who clearly is not willing to submit to lawful authorities.
That Ojwang case is such a sad situation. Now, the parents claim, or the father claims that money was stolen from his M-Pesa account. And you're talking about millions of shillings. How that happened, only God knows. I mean, the people were heartless. I mean, this is a family that is mourning, and you find a way of conning them off money. Shindwe kabisa. Now, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, says it has forwarded the name of former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions after he failed to honor summons over his post-election violence remarks. Speaking in Nairobi on Tuesday afternoon, NCIC Chairperson Dr. Samuel Kobia said Gachagua is among 26 other top-ranking leaders who are under investigations, including Tiati Member of Parliament William Kapket, Langata Member of Parliament Felix Odur, alias Jalango, and Kobia also called upon Kenyans and the political class to exercise restraint and tolerance during Wednesday's protest.
Currently, we are investigating 26 cases involving potential breaches of the National Cohesion and Integration Act, with the 2 cases already escalated to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution for further legal action. Once, as a commission, we have done our investigation, and therefore the case of the deputy president, the former deputy president, is before DPP as we speak. We have, as we have said, 15 other cases that we are following, and one of them is Honorable Mporo Aburi, who has already appeared to the commission.
Today, it has been just a great day for me, whereby we have agreed with the NCIC on how we are going also, me as Peter Salasia, also going to be part and parcel in preaching peace and uniting this country. As I move around, how am I going to speak to the young people of this nation to see, because you remember, even the death of Albert has united the entire country called Kenya. It was never like, for example, this from this and this from this, and that is the country that I really want to have. And even I personally, as Peter Salasia, I'll always ask anyone who maybe have talked bad and ask for forgiveness. Ask for forgiveness if I wronged anyone by speaking anything that, or maybe by mouth, by voice, by writing, or wherever.
All right. Now, over 7,000 secondary school heads have converged at Sheikh Zayed Hall in Mombasa for their annual national conference, which kicks off today, to deliberate on pertinent issues touching on competency-based education as they prepare to admit the first batch of grade 10 in senior secondary school next year. The Kenya Secondary School Heads Association Chairman Willie Kuria said this year's conference is anchored on embracing pathways in senior secondary schools, bringing together policymakers and other education stakeholders. Kuria, in a media briefing in company with association's top officials, said they'll mostly focus on senior school pathways to explore the implementation of school curriculum and the pathways.
Currently, we are investigating 26 cases involving potential breaches of the National Cohesion and Integration Act, with the 2 cases already escalated to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution for further legal action. Once, as a commission, we have done our investigation, and therefore the case of the deputy president, the former deputy president, is before DPP as we speak. We have, as we have said, 15 other cases that we are following, and one of them is Honorable Mporo Aburi, who has already appeared to the commission.
Today, it has been just a great day for me, whereby we have agreed with the NCIC on how we are going also, me as Peter Salasia, also going to be part and parcel in preaching peace and uniting this country. As I move around, how am I going to speak to the young people of this nation to see, because you remember, even the death of Albert has united the entire country called Kenya. It was never like, for example, this from this and this from this, and that is the country that I really want to have. And even I personally, as Peter Salasia, I'll always ask anyone who maybe have talked bad and ask for forgiveness. Ask for forgiveness if I wronged anyone by speaking anything that, or maybe by mouth, by voice, by writing, or wherever.
This year's conference is operating under the banner of embracing pathways in senior school, because we are very much aware that the CBE is entering senior schools next year, and therefore we shall largely be discussing the implementation of CBE in senior school. And of course we'll also be discussing other issues like the financing and sustainable financing of education, And we shall also be, among other things, we shall be discussing the health system in schools. We have a number of senior officials coming to address the conference. As I have said, the Deputy President will be here, the Cabinet Secretary for the Treasury and the Economic Planning. We shall also be having the Cabinet Secretary for Education, and we shall also be having the Cabinet Secretary for Health, among other dignitaries who will be attending this year's annual conference. I have said the main objectives is, one is the implementation of CBE and the pathways in senior school. There will also be the objective of, as I said, sustainable financing of education in Kenya. We shall also be looking at the role of the associations, the leaders, and teachers' union in delivery of quality education.
All right, as we wait for Ngaira to find his way here. By the way, there's a lot of problems when it comes to traffic. You won't get a lot of public transport today. They've been stopped from getting into the CBD, and some of the routes have been closed. Like if you're coming from Kariobangi, using Outer Ring Road, there's a place where public service vehicles are not allowed to go past. There's a police stop there, and people are being frisked, including pedestrians. And so there's a lot of police checks into as you head toward the city center. So if you're planning to go there, I really think if it's not necessary, don't go to the CBD. Let me advise you, if it's not necessary, don't go to the CBD, because there's a lot of police presence and a lot of frisking going on, and public service vehicles are hard to come by. Unless you're doing your own car, public service vehicles are hard to come by. Anyway, a family in Kipipiri area is demanding a thorough investigation and justice following the death of their relative who allegedly died by suicide while in police custody at Turasha police station. According to a police report obtained by EBN TV, the deceased 44-year-old Regin Dubi was arrested for allegedly obstructing police officers performing their duties. The report notes that Dubi appeared intoxicated at the time of his arrest. According to the report, during the routine check at 12:46 p.m., an officer discovered the suspect dead in the cell. It claims that he hanged himself with his shirt, which was tied to the padlock on the inner cell door. However, the deceased family has questioned the official account, citing suspicious circumstances surrounding the death.
Asubuhi leo ninasema nimekasirika. Nataka haki ya Dobe na tunataka familia yao ipate haki ya mtoto yao. Na huyo askari achukuliwa hatua kabisa daktari, kwa sababu hiyo ni kitendo baya sana. Amezoea watu, hata juzi alikuwa amekibisha kijana kingine, wiki tu ni siku mbili imeisha kabla aue. Alikuwa anataka kupiga bunduki, lakini sasa amenyoka kunyoka.
Mtu yule ambaye alikufa ndiye mrefu zaidi hapa Turasha. Na mahali amekufia akisema ni kujinyonga. Tunataka kujua yule afisa ambaye alimkamata achukulia hatua, kwa sababu huyo mtu ndiye mrefu hapa, na hata mahali wanasemekana amejinyonga. Hakuna mtu anaweza kufa hapo akijinyonga. Na kwa hivyo sisi tunasema namna hii, tukimalizana na siku hii ya leo, maafisa wote hapa station.
Mimi nakaanga hapa town kila siku, kila usiku niko kwa town. Mimi najuaga maneno mingi kuhusu hawa vijana, lakini hawa wafanyikazi wa hapa wanakujaga kukaa kwa baa, hawaendangi kwa vijiji, wanakujaga kwa baa kuangalia wenye tunakunywaga. Mimi nakunywaga mafuta, wenye ako na change, wenye ako na kitu.
Nachunguzwa, walikuja jana na tukaweza kuona mahali mwenda zake Ruingi alikuwa amesemekana amejinyongea, na tukakaa mpaka experts wanaitwa scenes of crime wakakuja, na watu ya CID wakakuja pia, wakaona vile kuko na uchunguzi ukaanza tayari kutoka hapo. Uchunguzi ukifanywa, CID wafanye na ipoa.
All right, let me get this. That the guy hanged himself using the padlock as the anchor where he tied the shirt. I mean, the padlock of the door to the cell cannot be up there, so it has to be at a point where he can even stand. Now, you know, this sounds more like the story the police gave us about Ojwang, that he hit his head on the wall until he died. Because the natural reaction of a human's body, even when you want to take your life, is that when you tie that, you will try and you will try and rescue yourself. The padlock is on this level, and you hang yourself on this level. Hiyo ni story ya jaba. Hapo mmetubeba ufala. But anyway, we're slowly getting used to this, right? Now, the cabinet met yesterday under the chairmanship of President William Ruto at State House, Nairobi, and the House approved the government-owned Enterprise Bill 2025, making a significant marking step in reforming the governance and performance of commercial state corporations in Kenya. The bill establishes a new category of commercial state corporations, now termed government-owned enterprises. It aims to address long-standing inefficiencies such as the appointment of unqualified individuals to leadership role by introducing a structured merit-based selection process overseen by an independent panel. The boards will elect its chairman from among the independent members. The bill explicitly prohibits conflicts of interest for both the chairperson and the independent directors, promoting professionalism, transparency, and commercial viability. All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we look at the newspapers. Some of them were shot outside Parliament, bills on it.
The headline of the Standard newspaper today is a luta continua, which loosely translates to the battle, the struggle continues. Yes. And it shows, the faces of the very young and determined, Kenyans who took their time to stand for what they believed in. But unfortunately, they became victims of an extremely ruthless regime.
But I can see that the paper has the pictures on both sides.
Absolutely, and it's a run through of all the faces because there are very many young of them. Those who have been documented so far, 60 at least 60 faces. So it's a pure. It's the face of the impunity that we are discussing, and the tragic story of what Kenya has been. But then, as the headline really alludes to, the struggle continues.
Now, I listened, just speaking on this, yesterday I listened to CS Interior Kipchumba Murkomen.
Yes.
And he was calling on the families of these, the people who lost their lives during the protest last year. He was saying that, I hope that is not my tea. he was saying that he was looking forward, or was trying to see whether he can meet these families to see how they can be able to help them.
Which is unfortunate, Fred, because this story has existed for the last 1 year. The president and the government is very much aware of the outcomes of that Gen Z protest. The president made a commitment on that same week that they were going to address not just the issues that had been raised, but also the families that have been affected, so that they can bring the country together. And a year later, for the CS of Interior to be able to say that, that's what you
on
call
the eve.
On the eve of the memorial of this historic day, is what you call grand hypocrisy and of unbelievable proportion. Yes.
Because, I mean, okay, you know, even if he's genuine in his heart,
yes,
the timing is just wrong.
It's unbelievable. And Fred, you know, it just shows the kind of people that we have in some very critical positions like this one, Fred. Anytime a country loses a life, it's something that is not, it's something to be taken seriously by everybody that is concerned, because a life of each and every Kenyan citizen is very important. And here we are not just talking of one, but dozens of kids that were killed. We are talking of 60, those who are documented. But Fred, we had 1 million people on the streets on that day, because when you look at just the projection of the numbers of the people that were in town there could be hundreds more who were injured that maybe were never documented, or maybe succumbed later on. Maybe they just got injured but then went home and never really made it. Because sometimes you can have what you call internal injuries. The story of Alan Ojwang, where there's no clear stabbing, but you've been beaten to a level where your internal organs can no longer function. And so the numbers could be more. And so looking at what we have on the headline of the Standard today depicts what Kenyans should do, is to keep the struggle, to ensure that we can be able to hold to account leaders like Murkomen.
Yeah, actually, even the Star has the same thing.
Yes.
Big test for Ruto and police over demos. Then it has the pictures of some of the young people who lost their lives during last year's Gen Z's protest. And you look at some of the faces, they're really young people.
Absolutely. Many
of
them,
these are very, very young
Many of them were just school, college students who had taken time to really now participate in a national endeavor, and they got caught up in the middle of the tragedy that it was. And these were young lives that could have turned our country, the fortunes of our country in the many years to come. But unfortunately, they succumbed to what I continuously say, the tragedy of 2025.
Yesterday, the president also, while addressing the country, told the police that they have the full support of the government. This coming just a day before the protest is a very telling statement. If you can remember, Rigiji, or the former deputy president, has been telling the police officers to see what is happening and to know that if you're given instructions, orders by your boss, unless they are on paper, don't execute them, because when stuff comes,
you'll
bear your own burden.
Absolutely.
But now the president is telling them, we got your back.
Absolutely. I think I would like to believe that the president is speaking in the context of the entire police service.
Yes.
Because, Fred, we have almost 109,000 police officers in the country, those who are working for the National Police Service Commission. And you do not want to assume that all of them are of the same character, of the characters of the individuals. And you do not want to do what you call gross condemnation of the entire police service. Because we do have some very nice police officers who do their job and serve their country very well and go back home happy people, past patriots. And therefore, I think we're looking at the kind of job that police officers do, which is very commendable. And I think the president in that context, and I believe the rest of all us Kenyans, we hope and support the Kenya Police Service to be able to do the right thing, which is to protect the people and the property, which is a cardinal duty that they do. My hope is that the president was speaking from that context.
Actually, today in the morning, I went through the CBD.
Yes.
And I must say, the presence of police within the CBD. I think the entire 109 have been deployed in the CBD. As in everywhere you go.
Yeah.
It's just police.
Yeah.
It's a safe feeling, but at the same time, an unnerving feeling, telling you that, hey, there's something that is about to happen. So
yeah,
you can be very, very, very sure that something will crack somewhere.
Absolutely.
And I know that some of the people are. I saw there are people who had woken up very early in the morning in some of the places,
yeah,
and guys were moving towards the CBD.
Absolutely.
And so there is a reason why the police should actually be stationed where they are stationed.
The last time the government did. The government and both the police and the government didn't quite prepare for such a huge turnout.
Yes.
And that's why the police were overrun, that particular place, Fred. I tell you, you're dealing with 1 million people, it's something else. And 109,000 is the whole country. Maybe in Nairobi we had 10,000 people, the ratio was just not enough.
Yes.
Because you don't just secure the CBD, they are also placed across the country. So you'll find maybe in the CBD at like 500 or 1,000.
Yes.
It's very hard to contain such a big number. So maybe this time round, they're preparing much more better to be able to handle any cases. Remember, Fred, the police have a duty to protect us, so they could be there to do the right thing, and that is to ensure that people's property is protected, and those who actually want to demonstrate peacefully and go home,
they can demonstrate
peacefully and go home.
And I remember the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga had actually, intimated the same, saying that Kenyans have a right to demonstrate peacefully.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they have a right to demonstrate, and that is a right that should not be taken away from them.
Yeah, it's just a confirmation of what the Kenyan Constitution says, and I pray that is the case, because Fred, sometimes some of these things are being it has been covered in the media in the last couple of days, that we still have other characters who had other plans for this particular day, and that were hoping for more deaths, which is a tragic statement. I think you saw it in the newspapers yesterday,
yes,
that there are people who do not mind other Kenyans not going back to their houses.
Yes.
And that is a challenge that we have as a country, because once we teach the culture of patriotism, which is you put your country first, then you know that the country is the country and the people. And even one Kenyan losing a life is a big deal that we shouldn't pray for.
Yeah.
But unless it's not your parent and your child, because if you're able to do that, then you can test the pain of losing a loved one. So all these people, for example, I keep saying the story of Erickson Tisia.
Yes.
His mother saw his son dancing on TV one moment, and the next moment his head was split.
Yes.
And he's a parent, Fred. I mean, he's taken time to raise a child, going to college. You do not want, at the time when now you've spent all this time to get your child to a certain level, and he's just about to go independent and maybe begin to start his own life, and then it ends just before it starts. A very tragic story.
And I'm praying that we don't have these stories today. Praying that, the demonstrations become peaceful.
Yes.
We have rogues, like the gentlemen, the gauchos of this world.
Yes.
The gauchos of this world.
Yes.
It's alleged that Sakaja had gotten goons into the CBD.
Yes.
So, and then when you see the expose that was done,
yes,
that reveals that there are people who are preparing goons to literally come and hurt people within the CBD, you get a little bit, you get the heebie-jeebies.
Absolutely, and Fred, you could clearly see that these were gangs that were coming in a coordinated manner. You can tell when demos are organic, because it starts with a few people, and then slowly people begin to come in, and also the way they coordinate themselves. And then you can see those ones who are outrightly coming in to loot people in motorbikes, and like what happened even during that Gen Z time. You saw the later days, you had gangs that would literally coming in with bikes, and they were street robbing people.
Yes.
It's amazing. Sometimes I always wonder myself, is that, so do we really have, so we do have people in this town who are professional criminals, that you hire them to go and rob, meaning they're armed robbers. And I hope the police service can begin to use such intelligence the intelligence that they have, to be able to contain such characters, because then that is not the country you want to have. We do not want to have Kenya to be another Haiti in any way.
And you know, the unfortunate thing is that when leaders, political leaders, start hiring these gangs, giving them money to go and oppress people, after a while, when these gangs are no longer needed, since they've learned that they can be organized in such a way that, you know, they can get money by causing violence and mayhem, they become a security threat.
Absolutely. And Fred, when you look at the Standard newspaper, that is what is covered across all its main top pages.
Yes.
They're just alluding to, like in one statement here, which I've seen, is that the Western envoys warn against hiring goons to disrupt protests.
Yes.
That seems to, that is exactly what has happened even in other countries, where, Fred, I told you, that countries that, when you hear countries that have collapsed, usually they collapse when the system has collapsed. And there's no way of holding into account the citizens or the people, characters who are committing these atrocities. And they start by being mobilized. No one is born a criminal, Fred.
True.
You learn to be a criminal, and through either by association or being inducted into a process. And then you become either a militia or something like that. That's why you find kids like the challenge that the country does have in the Kerio Valley, where kids are born, and it's not by their choice. You're born somewhere in West Pokot, and you find that this is part of our culture. And then you learn over time. And therefore, you do not want to have a situation where gangs are put together and then they are nurtured over time, to an extent that at one point they become too rogue that the government itself cannot be able to sustain it, and it turns into a failed state. Yeah.
Now, this will be a serious test for the Inspector General.
Yes.
Because if the young people are killed again today, like last year, this goes down as a very big red stain on his record.
Fred, if this president does not handle the issue of police abductions and fair justice, because it doesn't mean there are no Kenyans who are committing mistakes. There are Kenyans who are committing mistakes.
Yeah, very true.
And that's why there's a criminal procedure as to how criminals or suspected criminals are supposed to be handled, and how they're supposed to be taken through the criminal justice system and held to account. That is very clear. And therefore, if this police is continuously painted as one that is operating in a rogue manner, the person that takes the biggest fall will be the president.
Not even the Inspector General.
Not even the Inspector General. That's why the Inspector General of Police is looking out of place. Never mind. He's the person we should actually ask, because it's an independent police service.
Yes.
That is how it's assumed. We are presuming that the police service is an independent police service, and so the person accountable for the atrocity, for the actions of this police service, is the IG. But you see, there's a political price to pay for that, because of whatever, by association or something like that. So the president, if he doesn't handle this issue of abductions, because Fred, anytime we talk about abductions and demos, we're talking about lives being lost.
Yes.
No, that is the painful part. I wish it was a joke where we talk abductions and then and then your son shows up in the morning and tells you, I was in a disco
I'd gone for a protest.
Yeah. And I'm back home. You know, I wish these people could go back home. That is not a fact that they are dead. But Fred, when we're talking about a police service that ends up with all these deaths, Fred, I think that could be a very a funnel for more anger among Kenyans.
Yes.
And Fred, you do not want to have a repeat of what happened last year, because you had kids who didn't mind a chain of bullets right in their face, and they kept on coming in.
Yes.
Those are people who are determined to even die.
Yes,
and you know, they never left the country.
That's a mindset. That's a kind of mindset that
Fred,
suicide
sometimes,
bombers have.
absolutely,
Yes.
and because the police, that's why you had one police officer saying that he was among the police officers that got parliament. He was saying, we were trying to shoot to restrain them, but it reached a point he realized, if we continue, we are going to massacre these kids. That's why we had to pave way for them to make it into parliament, because we would have killed them, you understand?
Yeah.
And yet these were kids who were just demonstrating.
Yes.
And so I'm telling you, that level of determination, you do not want to have it countrywide, because then I doubt whether this regime would survive if that is sustained over time. Yes.
Now, the timing is so critical for mostly politicians.
Yes.
The timing of these demonstrations, in the sense that it comes at the end of June.
Yes.
And from the look of things, this is something, depending on how the government handles this situation today,
yes,
there will always be a commemoration
yes,
of these protests
yes,
every year.
Absolutely.
Now, our elections come on the second week of August.
Oh, August, you can imagine.
So meaning 2027,
of course,
if, depending on how today's is handled,
yes,
there will, on June, at a time like this,
yes, yes,
there will be a commemoration, and this commemoration just heighten the bitterness and the anger against the state.
Fred, the Gen Z protests in a way mirror the Soweto protest of in the 70s in South Africa,
Yes.
during the struggle for for the apartheid period in South Africa. And you see, it remains in the history of the South Africans, because these were young students
Yes.
who were determined to check on the government excesses. If they can celebrate that 40, 50, almost 45 years later, you can be sure we'll be having a memorial in 2026 around election time.
Yes.
And I don't want to imagine what it means for social media engineering and all
Yes.
these things. It will take a miracle for that regime to survive if that is achieved.
Because if we look at what is happening today,
yes,
it's guaranteed the young people are going to get, there is going to be demonstration.
Absolutely.
It's guaranteed. There are going to be protests. If the police handle it badly and we have young people dead, it will be so difficult for the Kenya Kwanza government to basically campaign and convince people that they are willing, that they are capable of doing anything, because the wave will be so strong against them.
What sometimes makes me wonder, Fred, is whether our President William Ruto, has access to media PR practitioners who sort of manages communication. Because you might mean something well. Like I've said, the Kenya Police Service, we have a duty to support it because it's an institution that has a duty to maintain law and order.
Yes.
And so not just the president, all of us must support the Kenya Police Service
Yes.
to ensure that there's law and order. So there's nothing wrong with the president saying we are fully behind the police service. I am equally fully behind the police service to ensure that the memorial today is peaceful and people actually escorted home. You know, nowadays, you know, we used to live in days when you'd when you're alone on the road and you see a police car, you'd wait for them to. I actually have one time boarded, me and my friend Ben Mulwa.
Yes.
We've one time boarded a police truck. You know, and it was a funny story. I didn't believe, but he was the one.
Stopped it.
He's the one who waved it. You know, it was raining and we wanted to get to a different location of town.
Yes.
And there was a policeman. And you know, he just told them, and I saw them stop. I thought, now, are we really going on that van? And we actually did go to the van, and it helped us from shelter, you know, and we get to another destination. We need to have a time when the relationship between the public and the police service is such that you can trust the police.
Would you stop one today?
On my own, no.
And even if it stopped, would you get in?
I'll doubt where we are going. I could be abducted from them. It's interesting, but we need to get back to that time, because the police service is not an institution from us. It's a Kenyan institution. It's based with it has a clear mandate within the law, and the people serving it are our brothers and sisters and associates. So it's not something strange. We shouldn't have a problem.
It should not be a problem.
Alan should not have a problem if he's late to work and it's raining and he doesn't have. He can store a van somewhere in Buruburas.
Very few people, by the way, would comfortably stop a police vehicle.
No, I like a lift.
Yeah, and get a lift.
I'm telling you.
You just say, wacha ninyeshewe.
But you see, that's what the police service is supposed to be. They say huduma kwa wote, you know, and because it's a public vehicle, Fred, actually. You're not supposed to pay anything. You know, public institutions are for all of us. For as long as you're paying taxes, Alan, you are free to board the one. But you see, the kind of relationship that we've developed over time.
You're not sure you're not sure that you'll be dropped where you're supposed to, and you'll be alive.
Yeah. So, but Fred, that's what I'm saying. But on paper, actually, that's what is expected of the police service,
Yes.
and that all Kenyans must support the police. Just like any other government institution that has a mandate to serve Kenyans, we have a duty to support it, including the military and the other government units. And so that is the expectation. But you see, the tragedy of what we're having now is that now that trust level is very low, that you cannot imagine willingly boarding a police van, which is terrible, because you need security, Fred.
I will not board.
Was the Kenyan,
I'm
so,
not boarding.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where we are, and I'm thinking the president in his statements, and my hope is that he means that he supports the police service in executing his mandate as per what the Constitution requires of them. You understand? And that is not an exception, because that is what all of us should do.
Yes.
55 million Kenyans, we need to support the Kenya Police Service to be able to do that. But I think sometimes the timing of the president's statement comes at a time when there's so much anger that somebody might think he's supporting what is happening at that particular time. Because you remember there's that classic statement of the president saying, the police did a good job. And I saw somebody had edited a video where people are being beaten by the police, and then the president is endorsing, the police did a good job. It might have been a propaganda video, but Fred, it just goes into adding the anger and the rage that people have against his government. And I think sometimes maybe the president is not handling it well, because if you look at the context, if the context is right, then we need to support the police service to be able to do. And the police service has struggled, by the way. You know, Kenya, we are heading towards 60 million Kenyans, and you know, the world ratio is about 1 to every 400 Kenyans. So it means we need at least 150,000 police officers. So with 110,000 police officers, it means we have a deficit of about 40,000. And also we need a revolving fund of about 5,000 police officers, because every year we have, I think, either 2,000, 3,000 people who are retiring from service, then a bunch of others who are caught up in other issues and they're leaving the service. So there's that attrition, I don't know what you call that, exit ratio of about 5,000. So you want to have 155,000 so that you're always at full capacity in terms of serving the Kenyans. And those are that including many other challenges that the police service have. But Fred, I think the president sometimes he seems not to be handling his PR well, and is caught off guard, because you do not want a day like this one when we are crying against the police is when you say the police has my full support, almost alluding to the full support to the atrocities that are being supported.
And you know, even yesterday, even as they talk about abduction, there are 2 people who are abducted.
Yes.
There's a guy, I think, called Kevin.
Yes.
These are people who, they were former, they worked with Mutahi Ngunyi some time back.
Yes.
2 of them.
Yeah.
And they were abducted yesterday in Gigiri.
Yes.
Police Subarus came, took them, and they disappeared.
Yeah.
So you almost get a feel like, hey, you got to walk on eggshells.
Absolutely, and it seems like the government never learns, Fred. There's something wrong with the African dictators, is that they never learn. They never learn until when, you know, I always have this memory of this image of the president, former president of Conakry. Which Guinea is the one that has capital Conakry? Guinea something. The one that capital is Conakry. That president, the young men who eventually, it was an uprising, resistance, which then the military took over from there, as it happens in most times when there's a civilian coup, where the crowd now exceeds, and then the military comes in to sort of contain what is happening. And so that was the case. And now the president who had been caught now in settles. He's chilling on the sofa. And, you know, there's a young man who is now technically the leader of the coup. So he's there talking. And the president is seated on his couch as if he's relaxed on a lounge. He can't believe that this 22-year-old is the one that, you know, a kid would ordinarily, you know, push around. Is now the leader of the country, and it is the disbelief on his face is what usually makes me laugh, because sometimes these African dictators, you must get to that level, is when they learn their lesson, which is very unfortunate, because from where I sit, Fred, I truly believe that this president was lucky to survive what happened last year.
Yeah, actually he was.
It was a civilian coup, and I don't think it would be able. It's different when it's a military coup, because the military is a small group. You can contain it if you're able to handle your things well, like we did in '82. But when it's the masses and you have millions and millions of people on the streets, Fred, it's hard.
They will overwhelm force.
Absolutely, including the police officers. And remember, Fred, the police officers that we have are also Kenyans. They are also paying SHA and SHIF. They are also not paying the housing levy fund, so they have issues with this government. Not everybody is entertaining it. Police officers are voters, Fred. You know, the police officers, they vote. So they are Kenyans and they pay taxes. So when you have such a civilian uprising like that one, that even ends up to a situation where parliament is banned, largely most presidents don't survive. And I think this president was lucky to survive. And it seems like he just didn't learn. He just didn't pick any lessons from what happened at that particular day. Such that
there are things he had said. I remember on the eve, the same day, when Parliament was banned, or the following day, he held a press conference, and he said, gave measures, things that he was going to do,
absolutely,
so that we never have to have this kind of Gen Z movement where protests are. If we were to do an audit of the things that he promised he was going to do that day, I don't know how you would rate him.
Well, a quick one. One of the issues that Kenyans had was grand corruption and wastage of public funds, and where they had these overnight billionaire politicians that were now spending money all over the place, and Kenyans are saying we need to cut costs and deal with the wastage of public funds. Fred, we've just moved from 51 state departments to 58.
From 51 to
58. Originally, when he came in as president, we had 42 state departments. He expanded it to 51. Now we have 58 PSs. Fred is just double the number of PSs that he added the other day. So, and that is billions of shillings. A lot of time people just think in the context of the salary of the PS. But when you head a department, it's funded fully. So there's a couple of billions of shillings going into a state department, Fred. So assuming even if it's 1 billion, it means you've added another 8 billion of Kenyan taxpayers' money just to split and be able to do that. Yet Kenyans, after struggling for many years, Fred, in the struggle of the new constitution and deliver devolution, we were supposed to run a very lean and efficient national government because most of the functions, particularly the basic functions, had been taken to the counties. So we just needed a president with 20 ministers and 20 PSs. But today we're talking of 58 PSs. You can just imagine the deviation between the cabinets, the number of ministers, and 50. What is so special about the functions when you're decentralizing them? Because the minister and the PS is largely a policy person, policy and budgeting. Then implementation is supposed to be done in the counties. We do not need 58 PSs, Fred. By just cutting down the excess, which could be around 38 if you minus if you put it against the ministries, 20 active ministries, then it means we have 38 excess ministry departments that we do not need. And all those, it takes
that
billions.
was one of the promises he
It was, Fred, remember, that's why people are being held to account. Any politician that was showing excesses and luxury, remember the issue of Sudi and Murkomen and all those people, it was because of that, because it means we're creating positions for politicians. And this president campaigned against the issue of positions. Remember, he was saying that these old men in Azimio, all they want is just positions. Prime ministers, and he even said there is no position of prime minister in the constitution. That the Lord of Poverty is just obsessed with the position, and then comes in and actually creates a fake prime minister's office, because we do not have a formal. Fred, based on our governance structure, there's nowhere where we have a prime minister. You understand? It's an illegal position. He repeats exactly what his done meant. That's why I'm saying, if Kenyans were just honest with themselves and were to hold their leaders to account, I wouldn't expect this president to even go past 20% in terms of votes. If it's just take his words against what is delivered, where I judge you, Fred, purely on one thing, on merit. Did you perform or not? Not any other factor. I doubt if this president would survive, because he has shown clearly he doesn't mind turning around and just doing exactly the opposite of what he said. And so the things that Gen Z raised at that particular time, and one of them I was using as an example, was grand corruption and wastage of public funds.
We're still seeing
we are still right there on the issues of that, police brutality and all those things that were supposed to be addressed. Today we're still talking of abduction a year later.
So this is going to be an Achilles heel for him.
Absolutely. And I think this president, maybe he needs another tougher lesson. So that he can learn.
What do you mean?
Maybe it's a hard nut to crack. Sometimes they say when you spoil the kid, you spoil the child. So the kid is not listening. We need to spoil the child so that he's able to learn. Because Fred, even his own life was at risk on that day as a head of state. because when you have such uprising, the target is the head of state. And for that such uprising to be success is when the head of state exits.
Yes.
And sometimes it can turn tragic. There are those ones who are lucky, they're kicked out of their positions, but they're allowed to run away and go in exile. But others are never lucky, you know. So that's why a president is given 5 police stations, you know, to guard him, 100 officers, which is an allocation of 5 police stations. Those ones that primarily guard him in person. Forget the area of CPD and the traffic coma. 100. So those are 5 police stations, because most police stations get an allocation of 20 to 25 officers. So if you're given 100 officers to guard you in real time, it means it's almost 5 police stations. They do that because of the danger of being in that position for whatever reason. It could be just jealous, not even that you've not performed. And so my prayer would have been that this president would have picked from what had happened at that particular time, cut the size of government, restructure the cabinet and bring in more young people into government. Let's see young leaders who have been saying they want to be leaders, give them positions, let them show us what they can do, so that come 2027, nobody can say that they excluded. You say, you asked for positions, I gave you the positions, what have you done? But when you look at it, we only have one young cabinet secretary who hasn't quite performed the CS, maybe not perform, but he's not that visible. The CS for water and irrigation. You know, he's a young man, hardly 32 years. He was the PA of the youngest MP, the youngest MP from Meru. That MP, the young man who became MP in 2017, I think, was like 25 years old. Paul Mwirigi. That Mwirigi, this CS was his PA. And he was also in his 20s. I wonder how he managed to navigate to get into cabinet. But he's the youngest CS there, 32, 33, maybe 33 years now. And we're hoping that you can be able to stand out. I saw the president appointed also a young old friend of mine called Fikirini Jacobs as a PS, now for PS, I think for youth affairs and things like that. And I'm hoping that, being that I always call him Sani, you know, he's from Mombasa, and he's like Joe. He's a show-off kind of a guy. I was telling, now you have a Ministry of Sports and Arts. They've placed you in the right place because you're Msanii. Please do something for the youth and sports and entertainment. I hope he's able to show something, because age has never been a leadership qualification, Fred. It's the actions. That's why sometimes you have people that become presidents in their 30s and they're able to perform, but others are able to become president in their 30s and they become extremely rogue and they're unable to conduct their duties. I think Kim, the North Korean president, is an example of what a young leader can do. He becomes pompous and overreaching. But so, Fred, I think there's a bunch of things that this, particularly the young people and Kenyans at large, did raise in last year, which unfortunately this president hasn't addressed up to today.
That is going to be crazy. I saw some disturbing videos yesterday on Twitter, on X, young people recording their last messages. I didn't find it funny because I know what could happen.
Yeah, and it's a response to the allegations that there were warmongers who are planning to come and destruct this memorial, and some of them jokingly saying that, you know, some of them will not come back. You saw on the newspaper yesterday, names, big names, you know, Joy, Brenda, Masinde, and the others, right on the newspaper, meaning the Nation Media Group is a verified media. I'm assuming before you give such a headline, you've done your due diligence to be able to tell if this is true or not. And if they did verify, you can imagine the kind of statements that were there, that some of them are watarajiwa, you know, dead. And this is somebody comfortably saying that, not forgetting.
And has not been summoned
absolutely by anyone, and they're just walking around. So, Fred, with that in mind, there is a response to that. You say, okay, be as it may, in the interest of my country, I'll turn up. And you do that, Fred, because at times in life you reach at a point where there's no return. That's what they call crossing the Rubicon. You know, crossing the Rubicon, and you're at that point you're saying there's no turning back. I believe the young men that we saw in Parliament who were facing police officers as they shoot and they kept charging in, I think at that point there's something called temporary insanity, because
you've just crossed the line.
We've crossed the line. There's no turning back, Fred. They're shooting, but you keep going.
You just say,
Others were even live on TikTok while at that moment it is being shot. You can imagine what goes into the head of such a person.
Yeah.
And sometimes as human beings we get to that levels and you say, you know, I almost said it in Luya. You know, we say Luwe. Wacha ikue, you know, Luwe. Let it be, you know. So you reach at that point, Fred, you say, you know, let it be. I'll be there to represent my opinion. And so you want to do that maybe at the very least so that they can remember you as one of those who are there for the country.
True. And the interesting bit about these demos is when you look at, there was at times you would not find, I might sound racist, but let me put it out there. There were times you would not find Somalis, Indians protesting. But right now, they are there and some of them are right at the forefront.
Fred, anybody that is in business in this country and wants to succeed in business will not survive under the conditions that we are living in.
True.
One is the cost of doing business in the country, which means registration, licensing, and taxation. That means, can your business operate in such an environment? The cost of power, the cost of labor. Fred, that's why most manufacturing companies are shifting their production, because how do I pay 35 shillings per kilowatt for power, while in South Africa can pay for 6 shillings. You understand? You can just look at the margin. Makes sense. The margin is just too big. You understand? So, and that applies to both small business people and large business people, because you might be a small business person, but if the economy is not performing and there's no circulation of money, then it means even if you have the best product in the world, Fred, but there's nobody's going to buy it. So you remain with the products like that. We have almost in excess of 600 billion of what you call pending bills, which is all to small businesses that are supposed to survive. And so, Fred, I'm telling you, anybody that is in business would not be able to sit and just watch. Yesterday, on Sunday, with a cousin of mine, we were meeting a client, a Somali client, in Kilimani there, and we had breakfast in the morning. He'd come from Mombasa, so he's an architect and they're working on this project. And he was telling me, how do we survive if the cost of doing this is this high? You understand? And that's why, for the first time, they were very passionate. He was very passionate about the politics of Kenya, because he was saying, before that, we the Somalis have always considered ourselves as a business community. That means you work with the government of the day. You understand, Fred? But where we are now, we cannot avoid raising issues, because what's going on in the country is not correct. The taxation there, you know, tax is an expense to a business because you're paying for it. And so therefore, when you have excess taxation, it's hard to run a business environment that's sustainable, because then it means that, Fred, you need to have for a business to thrive, you need to ensure that it's easy for you to have for business environment to be considered to be thriving. Number one, it must be easy for you to set up the business. So the bureaucracy of setting up and the cost of it must be very quickly to turn around and set up a company. Two, you must be able to access cheap credit so that you're able to fund the business ideas. So access to credit becomes an issue. That's why in countries where they have low interest rates, you're borrowing at 2, 3, 4%. You cannot compare to here when you're borrowing at 20, 25%. It's just not sustainable. Three is that then the taxation, you must be having a predictable tax period, where I know when I set up a business here for the next 5 years, I'm going to work with a VAT of 14%. So when I'm doing my projection as a businessman that I'm going to put 1 million or 10 million over the 5 million over the next 5 years, I can predict what I'm supposed to pay. But if you're going to have a new finance bill every year, it means you're altering the tax. There's a potential of you altering the tax provisions there. Then I can't predict what will happen the next 5 years, and especially for high capital intensive investments, where it takes time to recoup. You put your 100 million to do a housing project, Fred. You don't make money that back in a year. You want to take it over time. So you expect also to work within a certain tax period, so that you know Even with this taxation, I can be able to recover my money in 5, 6, 7 years if I'm able to do this, if I'm able to build this, say 50 apartments and sell them over in the next 5 years, I'm in business. But if that is not predictable, you can't survive. So Indians and the Somalis and the Arabs, who have been the business communities for a very long time, have a valid reason to be concerned of what's happening in the country, because they're also affected. Because in any case, they're the ones who are running most of the most formal businesses. So they can't escape paying tax, unlike the other small businesses where Alan could run his business from under his bed. You know, the stock comes from the bed and the man goes under the bed. So he can escape. But you know, if you own a factory, Fred, you can't escape. Absolutely. So they, for the very first time, and they are some of the major players of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance and the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and they have pronounced themselves many times over this issue of taxation and KRA being excessively obsessed with trying to crush small businesses. Yeah.
Well, we got to bring the curtains down on the show. We'll keep you updated in the course of the day of how things are happening within the CBD, so that you can be able to protect yourself. No matter what happens, don't try to be a hero. Don't try to be a hero. Let's help one another. Let's protect one another, because that's what we were called to do. Do have yourself a lovely morning.